Three, two. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D. If you're a fly fisherman of really any experience, but you just love the sport itself, I think one place that you have to go is Alaska. The problem is, once you go to Alaska once, you want to go back again and again and again. I think it's a magical place between the scenery, the fishery, and everything that it has to do with. Just getting there is incredible. So tonight on Off the Hook with Matty D, I want to bring in a lodge owner and guide from Alaskan Remote Adventures. His name is Ryan Kocherhans. And Ryan, thanks so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I'm doing great, man. I'm up here in Alaska kicking off the season. So,
Yeah, this season is kind of a short season. I mean, down in the States, you could fish all year. In Alaska, it gets a little tough to fish all year.
absolutely. Yep. Yep. We run short, but we run hard and have a lot of fish in that short summer we have here.
Yeah. So let's talk about Alaskan Remote Adventures, your lodge. You purchased the lodge about 7 years ago, but while you're new to lodge owning, you've been fishing the Bristol Bay area since you were what, like 10?
Yep, yep. So when I was just young teenager, my dad brought me up here for the first time and really fell in love with it. The first time I went to Alaska was actually in Southeast Alaska. But I love fly fishing, so naturally gravitated up here to the Bristol Bay area, which many people would consider kind of like a center point of fly fishing in Alaska.
Right. And you decided in 2019 to go all in, and you purchased a lodge that was failing, and you said, you know what, I got the skills to turn it around. And by golly, you sure have done that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's been a wild ride, but a fun ride as well. It's been a lot of work, but it's been very rewarding and things have really picked up and it's becoming a pretty well-oiled machine now. So
And I think one of the things that makes this interesting, I'm showing some pictures of your lodge here. The lodge that you bought, when you bought it, you found out they didn't have a lot of repeat clients. And so you said, hold on, as a business owner, that shouldn't happen in Alaska because you go back year after year and you fished. So you actually contacted some of the former guests, clients, etc., and said, why aren't you coming back? And you said, be harsh, be honest. And they gave you a rundown of like what you needed to do. And it wasn't your lodge then, but that helped you make your lodge better.
absolutely, absolutely. And fortunate for the lodge, myself, and the location. The complaints weren't about the fishing, but I was able to get a lot of good feedback from guests on some of the hospitality things and, equipment, staffing,
Right.
and something I still do today is, interview and questionnaire my guests as they're coming, not only to see kind of what their expectations might be, but also as they're leaving, just so we can get a real good dial on what worked well for them, what people liked, and of course, always maybe what they didn't like as much and any room for improvements.
And I think that that's it because, as I started this show by saying, I mean, once you go once, you are so spoiled by the fishery, the scenery, everything
Yeah.
that you want to go back again and again and again. And so now you take over the lodge and you have clients the first year and they say, hey, Ryan, we want to book with you again. And now you're getting repeat clients. And that is kind of the way it's supposed to be.
Right, right. Yep. I've got, some people that came up my very first year and they're still coming back this year. And, not everyone can fit into schedule or budget a yearly Alaska trip.
Hmm.
So I have some people that come every other year. I've got a great group of what will I call them in the fly fishing world? Maybe some influencers,
Right.
and they do some hosted trips with us, and they keep coming back year after year. So it seems to be working well.
You have one, and we'll talk. We'll see some pictures of his later that you've posted on your site. Sun Tao, who's a influencer. Everybody in the fly fishing community on Instagram follows Sun Tao, former military veteran. I mean, just a heck of a nice guy. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Love fishing with Son. He's coming up in August,
Mhm.
and he's been great to also give me some great feedback as he brings guests through,
Right.
and been pretty influential and helpful in my business. So always got to give love to Son and love seeing him up here.
All right. So Alaskan Remote Adventures, where are you located? We said Bristol Bay. Let's kind of like pinpoint this down. You're on a major river.
Correct, correct. So the river system is known as the Nushagak River System. Nushagak goes into Bristol Bay at a town called Dillingham, really kind of a capital of where they run commercial fishing.
Mhm.
If you go upriver from Dillingham, the Nushagak eventually splits into two rivers. So you have the Upper Noosh as well as the Mulchatna. We are on the Mulchatna River. Mulchatna is pretty big water. We are about 120 river miles from Bristol Bay. So a little ways, but it also provides a great environment because we have all these tributaries coming in. So we've got tributaries up and down river that will fish as well as our main river, and just really provides a nice variety of species on our home river system that makes for a great trip experience.
And I think that that's interesting. So 120 river miles, and people like not understanding it. I mean, these fish, and we're going to talk about different species, travel miles and miles and miles. I mean, they go all the way out through all of these river systems in Alaska, and it's not just the kings; it's everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the benefits of being up here is we're getting closer to those salmon spawning grounds,
Hmm.
which translate to some really amazing rainbow trout, Dolly Varden, and Arctic grayling fishing as they are feasting on those salmon eggs, and as the season goes on, even the flesh of the dying spawning salmon.
So you mentioned the spawning salmon because they have a life cycle. They come up and they spawn. You have the rainbows there. So let's talk about the season. When do you begin opening up your lodge? When do guests first start coming? And then when is it like, okay, it's getting kind of hairy weather-wise, we got to start closing things down?
Yeah, so I usually get up here towards the beginning of June.
Mhm.
The fish will start entering the new Shagak around that time, or at least by mid-June. We'll start running guests at the end of June, and we will run solid through the first or second week of September. That's kind of when we things start slowing down a little bit for us, and we'll close up, winterize the lodge, and be done for the season.
So you're talking you're doing at least a 10 to maybe 13-week season up there.
Yep, yep. I'll usually try to run about 12 weeks each season.
Okay. Yeah. And so I mean it takes you, obviously you said you get up there early June. It takes you and your guides a couple of weeks to kind of open the lodge back up from being winterized, kind of get the whole thing going. So there's a lot of work before that first guest arrives.
Absolutely. Yep. We're getting, just like you said, everything ready for the summer, just unwinterizing. And then a big part of it is just getting our boats in the water, getting our motors mounted on them, making sure everything's running, and making sure we're just well prepared for when guests arrive so that things can run smoothly for the entire summer.
Let's talk about your staff. How many guides? I mean, you guide as well, own the lodge. How many guides do you have on your staff?
So I always have a consistent full-time four guides. will typically only run 8 guests a week at the lodge.
Okay.
That's pretty intentional just because being so remote, it provides a great fishing experience that is even in Alaska is sometimes hard to find because it's very realistic to go out and not see another angler all day.
Mhm. And that,
Then
I think,
we
go ahead.
we also do some float trips and some combo float launch trips. So when we get in the thick of that season, I might have up to 8 guides working at the same time.
Okay, so you got a couple of things you're offering, and let's get into that. So you have an offering where a angler or a group of anglers come in and they stay at the lodge and they go in and out of the lodge every day. But then you have a float trip where they kind of start and then float their way down and camp out overnight. Is that how that works?
That's correct. Yep. So they'll spend 3 to 4 days on the float portion. Just like you said, camping, setting up camp, the guides do that, the cooking, they'll set up camp each night, move down the tributary systems, which will eventually put them onto the Mulchatna River, and then they can get to the lodge, enjoy some hot showers, some good home cooked meals, and go out and target the species of preference on the jet boats.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll run, 16 to 19 foot flat bottom boats with outboard jets. And that kind of allows us to move around and really dial in and target where those fish are at that specific week.
And when you're doing this, let's start with the lodge only, right? Describe a day. So I guess let's start a little back first. What is a week? Is it like Sunday to Sunday, Monday to Monday, Saturday to Saturday? What is a week? Is it 7 days, 6 days of fishing, correct?
Yeah, very close. So it's 6.5. I'm sorry, it's 5.5 days of fishing.
Okay.
So we typically have people get to Anchorage the night before they're going to come to the lodge. There's a regional airline flight to a village called Iliamna, and in Iliamna we'll pick you up on the float planes,
Okay.
and you've got about a 40-minute float plane ride out to the lodge. That first day, we're going to get you settled in your rooms and feed you lunch, and then we go hit the river and get a half day of fishing in,
Okay.
followed by 5 days of full fishing. And then your last or seventh day is typically a no fish day. Gonna wake up, eat breakfast, get packed, and get ready to catch the float plane to head back to Iliamna, Anchorage, and then home.
And as I remember from my flight, pretty much everything leaving Anchorage when you're coming back to the States is an evening or a red eye flight. So, yeah.
Yes, so it works out well, and I'll usually get people back to Anchorage by afternoon, early evening,
Mhm.
and it is remote Alaska, so I tell people to catch those red eyes. It's nice to give a little cushion in case there might be any kind of delay getting back to Anchorage.
For sure. Okay, so that's kind of the standard, but what does a day look like?
Yeah, so we're lucky, like I mentioned, without the crowds, we're able to keep a pretty relaxed schedule here. We're not competing for fishing space or having to wake up super early.
Mhm.
And so we'll typically wake up, have breakfast around 8 o'clock a.m. We're on the river fishing by 9. A lot of our lunches, we'll do packed lunches on the river or a shore lunch where, if you want to try a fresh salmon, we'll always, of course, send sides and snacks. Then you're back to the lodge between 5 and 6 o'clock p.m., where we've got appetizers, dinner, and dessert waiting for you. We do have a little lounge room and a bar, a fly tying room. So generally, people will just relax for the evening, maybe have some campfires and s'mores, and go to bed, and then repeat the next day.
It is a tremendous amount of fishing for sure. I mean, I found probably on the fifth day, I was like, wow, my arm is just sore because I mean, you are casting a ton, you're having fun. I mean, you don't realize the fish you're fighting, but it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's excellent. And sometimes we'll even have guests come back a little bit early. They're just saying, "Ah, my arms are tired," and they want to come back and hang out at the lodge and have a drink or some appetizers. And then we always get the people that just want to fish hard all day, and we're always up for doing that as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, so that's a lodge. Now, let's talk a little bit about the float trip stuff because you said you end up back at the Mulchatna at your lodge. Where do you start? Do you start like does a float plane take you and drop you off, or how does that all work?
Exactly. So when you get to Iliamna and get on the float plane, instead of flying right out to the lodge,
Mhm.
that when you come to the lodge, they'll just land on the river right in front of the lodge here. And so on the float portion, we're actually going to drop you on the Cockatoo River, it's called.
Okay.
And there's a little pond there just big enough for a float plane to land. You'll get your rafts and gear set up, packed on the raft, and start that float and set up a new camp each evening.
So it's 3 days of floating down. You mentioned, is that correct?
Yep,
Yeah.
correct, correct.
And so is the schedule the same in the float? Kind of wake up and go around. Well, wake up maybe 7, have breakfast at 8. You're fishing and floating the whole way down.
Yeah, usually that schedule is a little bit tighter just because you've got to cover a certain amount of ground each day.
Okay.
So, you might start earlier or fish later. Usually we'll pick a campsite where you can even just fish from the bank there, that type of thing. So.
Now there are what is there 12, 10, 15 species of fish in your rivers? Let's talk about that because I mean it is I called it an aquarium because it was
Yeah.
incredible what you can catch.
Yep, yep. So we've got all 5 species of Pacific salmon.
Mhm.
So that's going to be your kings or Chinook. You've got your reds or your sockeye. You've also got your chum or your dog salmon. You do have your pinks every other year. And
Right.
then we've also got the silvers or the coho that come in August. We've got a lot of those leopard rainbow trout, Arctic grayling, Dolly Varden. We've got pike. They'll hang around in the sloughs and come out after salmon fry in the main river. And then occasionally we'll hook into a whitefish, and there is also a sucker species that's here that'll once in a while pick up a fly off the bottom, something like that.
Right. And so is it the first species that comes up to your river, up to the Mulchatna? Is that the king? Is that the first species that runs in the river system?
Yeah, so we'll typically start seeing kings and sockeye around the same time.
Okay.
Chums are following real close, and that's typically starting around the end of June and through July. Also, the pinks will start seeing in, mid-July and into August a little bit. And then as August rolls in, we get in more into the silvers and the cohos. Grayling are active all season long. They're real fun, top water action all season. The rainbows, they kind of have a little peak in July when the salmon start showing up, and then also again they show up strong in August. And then the Dolly Varden we typically don't see many of until August.
Really? So why are the dollies? Are they just later run fish?
Yep, yep. And a
Yeah.
lot, not all of them here are sea run, but some of them are. So they're essentially following the salmon up on their journey,
Right.
and they become really active and kind of start grouping together once the kings and sockeye start dropping eggs.
So the rainbows, which I couldn't believe the size of the rainbows. I mean,
Yeah.
people in the States, oh, I caught a 12-inch rainbow. It was one, no, I caught a
Yeah.
28-inch rainbow.
Yep.
I dropped a 30 at picture. I mean, it was like I was like, no, that's the market. No. And so,
Yeah, yep.
it's incredible. And they so spotted up and just, I mean, the fight is insane.
Yeah, yeah, I would say pound for pound, they're probably the hardest fighting fish. Of course, if you hook into a big king, a
Right.
big salmon, they're going to fight hard. But all these rainbows, these leopard rainbows, they're all wild fish on our river system,
Right.
and they fight hard. In fact, a lot of anglers, when they hook into an upper 20 or low 30-inch rainbow, struggle even landing the fish if they don't have some experience with it.
They do dart, run, jump, come out. They do everything.
Yeah.
And if until you kind of get used to that, you do this. Oh, and then
Yeah.
once you do that, they're slacking the line and it's over.
Yep, yep. And they are very acrobatic. It
Yeah.
can be fun. Like you said, they're jumping out of the water and going crazy.
Right.
So
So can we talk a little bit about conservation? I assume rainbows are catch and release only.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. And we definitely lean on the more conservative side.
Hmm.
It is legal to keep, I think we're at 2 kings per year per angler.
Hmm.
But just, as a personal and lodge effort as a business, we've kind of gone mandatory catch and release for those kings, just trying to do our part. There's not a lot of rivers that even open for a wild king run in Alaska anymore, and
Right.
we're fortunate enough to still have a solid run. Um, if people want to take some meat home, we're okay with that, but we're gonna, steer you into sockeye in July or the coho in August, that are at least at this time still having, really strong numbers of runs. As far as our resident fish, which are going to be our rainbows, our grayling, and some of the dollies, we are catch and release policy on those.
And so I want to talk quickly, if we can, about the king system. I mean, I've been reading, for years that the numbers, the overall population is dwindling, and so
Yeah.
and I did hear this year, as you just said, there's a number of river systems that you can't even go for kings anymore. So
Yep.
I mean, that's really sad considering it was the quote unquote king of Alaska. I mean, it has its name for a
Right.
reason, right? I mean, so sad that it's been like this now.
Yep. Yep. So that's why we've elected to do that too, because, like we both mentioned, a lot of river systems, if people came up 20, 30 years ago, those rivers don't even open anymore.
Wow.
And although it is managed, in my mind, I guess it hasn't been managed that well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the results kind of speak for themselves and
Sure.
the runs we're seeing now. And there's a lot of factors that go
Right.
into that and reasons, which is you could have a whole conversation
Sure.
about that. But as far as doing our part here on the river, and especially because we're upriver and near their spawning grounds, we prefer to just catch release, which means you can catch them, you can get a great picture,
Right.
but it is a water release. It's illegal to remove it from the water if you are going to release a king
Gotcha.
salmon.
And then the sockeyes. I mean, I just saw a report. So every fall, there's kind of a forecast of how many sockeyes will enter like the Bristol Bay region and whatever. And I just
Yeah.
saw a new update. They actually increased it by something like 20 to 30 million or something crazy because they're seeing more coming in. I guess there's a marking system. You would know a lot more about that than me.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And actually,
Oh, I knew you were doing something there.
let me grab this real quick and I can tell you some numbers as
Okay.
well.
While he does that, I'm just going to pull up a couple of pictures here. That's his website. We'll talk about this. This is Alaskan Remote Adventures.com is where you can find out more about Ryan and his lodge and all the different species. Ryan back. So Ryan, what do you got there?
Yeah, so some could argue the exact accuracy of these numbers, but
Sure.
it's at least a great idea. And from what we see here at the lodge, they do seem pretty accurate numbers. But Fish and Game of Alaska, it's about 30 miles upriver from Dillingham, where we were talking earlier, where
Hmm.
the river system hits Bristol Bay. They have a fish counter. And so they will give us numbers. They don't update every day, but pretty close to it,
Right.
of the fish that they are counting downriver, which gives us a great idea of the fish that we'll see upriver.
Right.
So, this year, as of July 2nd, we're at just about 27,000 kings in the river system.
Okay.
Just for comparison, total number last year was 42,000. And over the last several years, it's been anywhere from 30 to 55,000.
So down a smidge. Okay. Yeah. But
Yep,
yeah.
yep. And those numbers even 5, 10 years ago would have been a lot higher
Right.
as well.
Hundreds of thousands. Right.
But we're still seeing a lot of kings. I mean, we're in a great spot. We've actually caught some right off the bank in front of the lodge already.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some great spots around. Then if we move to the sockeye, we're having a great year for sockeye. We're already at 2.5 million. So we have days of 100 to 200,000 fish passing by that fish counter a day. And to kind of put that in perspective, I think since 2020, the highest number, let's see, 2021, we had almost 4.7 million sockeye.
Mm-hmm.
2024 and 2023 was at 1.7. So we've already passed, we're just at the beginning of July.
Right.
We've already passed the 2024 and 23 numbers.
That's incredible. I mean, so, and as you said, July is the sockeye month, so you still have a ways to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's important to remember that the salmon don't cycle back every river. They don't cycle back up river to spawn every year.
Right.
There's some research and debate on how long the actual cycle is, but typically salmon are going to be in a 3 to 5 year cycle in the ocean before they come back up the river
Right.
and go spawn right where they were born.
It's just the whole process is really incredible. It's really it really is fun for sure. I appreciate you getting those numbers. That was really cool of you to do. I want to pull up some pictures of some beautiful shot here of one of those leopard rainbows.
Yep.
Just so much fun. A bigger one, and these are right off of your rivers, right here at the Mulchatna.
Yep. In fact, that picture right there, that's in the bank, off the bank in front of the lodge right here. So
Wow.
right where we park our boats. So we will catch them a lot on the main river. And the fun part about, mid to late to July through mid to end of August is that's when those sockeye are really starting to break out of their big pods and they'll pair together along the bank.
Mm-hmm.
The chums do the same thing and start dropping eggs. And at that point, it becomes really high numbers of rainbows and dollies packed in beneath those sockeye. So it's a great time to target them because not only are you going to find some big fat rainbows,
Right.
you're going to find a lot of fish.
It's just incredible. But at that point, I'm assuming the sockeyes are more of a nuisance because you're trying to fish around them to go for the rainbows.
Yeah, exactly. And every once in a while, you'll still hook into a sockeye.
Sure.
And at that point, they're red and spawning, and we're trying not to mess with them anyway, so they
Right.
can just do their spawn. But the bucks, we call them the males, they'll get especially that big hooked jaw.
Mm-hmm.
They become pretty territorial and defensive of their reds or their nests. So if something comes by, they're where they're protecting, they'll actually go pick it up to move it away. And
Right.
of course, if they go pick up a hook, generally going to have a fish on there. So.
It's gonna be game on, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned the hook, and I pulled up this picture. We mentioned him before. This is Sun Tao, and you can see the hook jaw. This to me is so representative of an Alaskan fish. Everybody wants the picture of the red body, green head, because it's like, I went to Alaska and, I mean, everybody has this picture. It's awesome, right?
Yeah. The great photo opportunity. And, and when they come up, they don't quite look like that. Right now they're still silver, they're
Hmm.
pretty chrome. But as the month of July goes on, that transformation takes place surprisingly rapidly. And so that's of course not a fish that you would want to eat,
Right.
but makes an amazing picture. It's really an awesome fish to be able to catch and hold and experience. So
And I think this picture here, I'll pull it up a little bit bigger for you to see. That is a sockeye early season changing. Is that correct? Or is that a silver changing?
you know what? That actually is probably a king.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
He's
Okay.
getting a little shaded. And
Yep.
one thing that I always look for on those is your silvers aren't going to have quite the distinct spots like that.
Okay.
And another just characteristic that will for sure signify a king is that black gum line.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Because when I was looking at a couple of pictures before this here, if I go back through the sockeye, that's a beautiful king. Well spotted.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's our buddy Tim Camisa. He's big in the fly fishing education world, and yeah, he's coming up in August as well to get some more. So
I mean, it just, I, when we went, we were well out of the king game, and we went up for silvers and so back into sockeye and rainbows and all. But I mean, I would like to do that, but at the same point, like, I don't know, everything else you have is so much better to me. Like, I could spend days just going for grayling because I thought it was the most pretty fish I had ever seen.
yeah, they're beautiful, and there are some states in the lower 48 that have grayling as well. The thing I love about them up here is um, they get big, and
Yeah,
grayling are naturally not a big fish. If
right.
you're catching a 15 plus inch grayling, that's a big grayling, and they age, they don't grow quick. So if you're catching a trophy grayling, that fish could be potentially 20 plus years old.
That was the most amazing thing to me is the how slow their growth is. But we were floating, little flies on the
Yeah,
top water, and all of a sudden you just see it come up and just sip it. And I was like, just blown away.
yeah.
I'm just
Yeah, that top fin is beautiful, and it's one of those fish that almost pictures don't do it justice,
it,
because when you're there in person and hold it, you can see like shimmering shades of purple, emerald, just kind of depends on the fish.
really, really so pretty. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. 'Cause what does a client need to bring with them? Or before we even get to that, right? So I'm interested in coming to Alaska. I go
Yep.
to your website. Let me pull it up here. Alaska Remote Adventures Lodge. It's Alaskan Remote Adventures.com. And you can read all about it. You have a great video here, by the way. This video is
Oh,
fantastic. Talks
thank
about
you.
you, the lodge, the whole thing. But on the bottom of every page, and I think this is really smart, you have a get in touch with, right?
Yep.
Either find out more, or you even put your direct email and even
Yeah.
a phone number. So
Yep.
I'm interested in coming in. Probably the first thing I should do is get in touch with you and have a conversation either by phone or by email, so you can ask me questions and steer me, because as you said, there's different seasons as to what I'm looking for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm of the mindset of, yeah, the first thing, probably fill out that form. Anyone can always give me a call or email me as well. But one of the first questions I ask people is, what are your expectations, or what are you envisioning for your trip to Alaska? Because it is an incredibly large state. There's a huge variety of fishing and opportunities, including ocean fishing.
Mhm.
So, some people come to do the saltwater thing, where we're, of course, a freshwater river and stream fishing lodge.
Right.
And if it doesn't fit for really what someone's expectations and visions are, then I'm happy to steer them in the right direction. And so that's kind of the first qualifier. If someone's looking for some great fly fishing, we take some spin fishers as well, but point is it's all freshwater river stream fishing.
Right.
And then we can kind of guide you into the best week depending on what type of species you want to catch. We'll get people that specifically want to come catch a king, not only a wild king, not only is that unique, but especially on a fly rod. There's not a lot of places that offer that opportunity.
Right.
And we get some people that really want to focus in on those rainbow trout or maybe the more unique fish like the Dolly Varden and the grayling. And we always have people that love to come up and chase the silvers, just because they can be really aggressive with big streamers and a pretty acrobatic fish as well.
And so once I kind of get that, worked out with you in terms of, I want to come up for sockeye, and you tell me, Maddie, you want to come up here, second or third week of July. You'll be into them thick and we'll have some fun with some other fish. What's the next step? Is there a deposit involved, and how is that done?
Yes, correct. So we use an online platform. Typically, we're going to ask for a 50% deposit
Hmm.
just to reserve your week.
Yep.
Um, and then we have a really nice online platform where I'm going to input you into that system. It's got a billing platform. You can pay right through there. And it's also going to send you an introduction email, a couple PDF attachments, with some hotel recommendations in Anchorage. We're going to get you your regional flight schedule. I try to make it easy for people. So you got to worry about getting to Anchorage and your lodging for that first night.
Right.
Then from there, we pretty much take care of everything. We do have people cover the cost of the regional flight to Iliamna.
Hmm.
Once you land in Iliamna, it's pretty much an all-inclusive trip. The float plane in and out is included in our package price as well.
And I think that's important to understand. So really what I'm paying for is my trip from my home to Anchorage. And
Yeah.
then that gets me into Ted Stevens, which is the main airport. The secondary airport is Merrill Field, which is like a small little, but it's on the north side of town, 10 minutes away from probably where you're staying. And then
Yeah.
you're using Lake Pen Air, and it's these, 8 to 12 seater planes. So if you're a little bit skittish about some small prop planes, you might want to take some Dramamine, or maybe I loved it
Yeah.
because once we got up, and we should talk about this, Ryan, once you get out of Anchorage and you start going toward Iliamna, the scenery is like out of a movie. It is incredible.
Yeah, it really is. It's only just over an hour flight, but I find myself every year still taking videos on my flight in and out because you fly over that western Alaska mountain range
Yep.
and you see what seems like an endless sea of mountains and glaciers and peaks, and there's almost always snow up in there, and you can see the glacier waterfalls and rivers and streams running off, and the watercolor and some of the lakes up there are just breathtaking.
I mean, it's like pearl blue or so. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
how could it be this pristine? But it's Alaska. It's the final frontier. I mean, it's the largest state in our nation with almost the second fewest inhabitants, really, when you think about it, right? So
Yeah, yeah, it's a pretty amazing place, and I have a little picture map here that just is an overlay of Alaska
uh
over the lower 48. And although people know it's big, when I show them that, it's usually like, "Whoa, I didn't realize it was that big."
Yeah, I mean, and you're going to like this small little piece between Anchorage to Bristol Bay to where you are on the Mulchatna. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much more, which is pretty incredible. All right, so now I booked my trip. I'm coming up. My flight's in a couple of days. What do I need to bring as a guest? Rods, reels, waders, boots. What do I need to do? Licenses.
Yeah, yeah. So our booking platform is going to be pretty good about sending you some reminder emails with packing lists, flight schedules, just that thing. It's a big trip, so we like to just keep it as clear in everyone's mind as possible. Um, I've also got Starlink at the lodge, so I try to remain in touch with guests if
Hmm.
there's any questions or anything that they need to clarify. If people want to bring their own fly gear, they can. We also have a lot of gear at the lodge that they can just use, and that's included in their package. So we'll run 6 weights, 8 weights, and 10 weights.
Hmm.
I always recommend if people have waders and boots that they know fit them well and they're comfortable in to bring them. If not, not a problem. We've got some great gear at the lodge here as well. So I do have people fill out a questionnaire if especially if they're going to use our gear just on sizing, dietary restrictions. Being so remote, we've got to be on that
Hmm.
well ahead of the game because it is definitely a logistic strategy to plan and prepare ahead for all that. And other than that, we're going to provide, all your leaders, flies, any spinners or lures if you're spin fishing. We run 2 people per boat per guide.
Okay.
So of course your boat, fuel, all that's included in your trip. So as long as you bring your clothes that you're comfortable in, and have boots and waders or use ours, then you're pretty well set, and all your food and beverages are taken care of by us, with the exception of alcohol, but
Right.
we can help you get that out here. So
Right. And when we talk about packing clothes, because it is Alaska and the weather can change on a dime, you need to bring things, everything from, a light sun shirt kind of a thing. I don't know that I ever wore shorts. I actually wore under my waders, but it's a whole different story.
yeah.
But I mean, but at the same time, I mean, we had some fleece, we had a lot of rain gear because you don't know what can change real quick.
Yep, yep. And I always advise people to bring some non-cotton clothing as well. I, of course, still wear some hoodies and things around the lodge, but when you're going out, it's nice to have stuff that's pretty quick drying in
Yeah.
case you get wet, either from the rivers or from the rain.
Hmm.
And biggest key with clothing is I tell people just be able to dress up and down according to the weather.
Right.
Like you said, it can vary a lot during one week and it can even change drastically in the same day. So you might leave the lodge and it's pouring rain and cold, and by the afternoon it's sunny and warm and you're stripping layers.
And there people should also be aware, and I know you tell your clients this. There can be a little buggy at times.
Yes, yes. So shorts are not real popular. The long sleeve shirts, a hoodie's great. But yeah, the bugs are out. Some seasons are worse than others.
Right.
But yeah, always good to have some like pants and long sleeve shirts. And sometimes if we're just hanging around the lodge and by the fire and the bugs are bad, I even recommend people bring a bug net, or I keep some here, just in case there's a healthy population of mosquitoes
Yeah.
going on at the
I
time.
I found that once the breeze kicked up, though, that they kind of couldn't substand, hang in the breeze, which was nice. So
Exactly. The wind and the rain really help keep those down, and that's one benefit of having quite a bit of wind and rain.
yeah, for sure, for sure. One of the things I noticed in your website here is for people that want to take a day trip to see the bears at the Katmai River. You offer that as
Yeah.
well now.
Yeah, absolutely. So flyouts aren't really a thing that we offer much, but if someone really wants to do them,
Hmm.
we can. And so we have several groups each year that want to do a flyout. So our go-to is to Katmai National Park.
Hmm.
It is a fly-in only access national park. There's a couple spots we can go depending on the time of year. So, of course, there's the ever famous Brooks Falls.
Right.
Um, Anymore, it's getting very crowded
Yeah.
there, as more and more people discover these places. In August, we'll be doing some flyouts to an area called Moraine Creek. And this is where you can get out and fish for some trophy rainbows. We're talking upper 20s into 30-inch rainbows, and you're literally down there fishing with the bears.
But that's an experience. I mean, it's Alaska, right? I mean,
Yep.
you want to be smart. But they're interested in the same thing that you're going for, just usually not the ones that you're going for.
Yep, yep, exactly. They're so focused on catching salmon, that's just what they're there to do. They're just there to feed and get their fat on before the winter comes.
Yeah.
And so, we do take precautions in case something were to happen.
Right.
But, those areas do see people. There's a lot of fishermen and a lot of photographers coming through. So they're very used to people. And, your first time, at least my first time, it was a little nerve-wracking.
Sure.
Your heart starts beating. You're thinking like you're looking at your guide, we're okay, right?
Right.
But once you're there, you kind of settle in and get your casting going, and it's a really fun thing to experience in person and makes for some great videos and
It,
pictures as
it makes for
well.
amazing videos, and it's a thing to talk about as well. So Ryan, for people who are listening to this, who are watching this, and they're thinking of coming to Alaska, and they're thinking, I'm going to DIY it, I'm going to go to the Kenai River. This is something you and I talked about a long time ago, and you looked at me and said, "Do you enjoy fishing with 100,000 of your closest friends?"
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I always tell people I don't like to knock on anywhere for fishing because it can all be great up here, but fishing some of those main rivers on the road system is just not really what I'm looking for, or a
Yeah.
lot of our clients. And so I always tell people, hey, if you want to go do that and go experience it, great. And I'm happy to even connect you with some outfitters that I know are gonna, treat you well, and you're gonna have a good experience with. You might be waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning to get out there, but yeah, that's the beauty of out here. And I think I already said and tell people, hey, if you can, it might be a little bit more money, but it is so worth it to fly out somewhere, especially in this Bristol Bay region,
Yeah.
where you can get out and enjoy a river to yourself all day.
And I think
And
that that's the thing. It's you and your buddy in the boat, because you said it's two anglers to a guide in a boat,
yep,
and you're out all day, and you're hooting and hollering, and you're hooting and hollering to nobody but the three of you. There's nobody
that's
else
right.
out there.
That's right.
You're not yelling fish on, so 17 lines come out of the water or something crazy like that. So again, Ryan, and I might have missed this. How many anglers can you take in your lodge at one time? Put the float aside, just physically in your lodge.
Yeah, so I have run groups of 10 to 12. 12 is going to be our absolute max
Uh,
right now. I'll only run that much if it's one group
right.
that is coming together, that either knows each other or was organized together.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of our weeks end up, different group. We might have a group of 2 people that come, and a group of 4, and another group of 2. Some weeks I'll even have several single anglers that'll come. I just decided early on, hey, there are a lot of people that maybe they don't have friends that can or want to come with them. But our ideal number, or if I have mixed groups like that, we'll run 8 anglers
Okay.
a week. So we'll have two, like I said, 2 people per boat per guide. So we're typically running 4 boats a day. And that keeps it nice because we've got so much water here.
Yep.
If you guys want to fish together, we'll kind of stick in the same areas and do lunch together. But
Hmm.
if you just want to go out and not see anyone all day, then that's what we'll go do.
Gotcha. How long should a prospective client book in advance? A year, 6 months, 2 years?
Yeah, I always recommend, if you know you're coming, you really want to come and get a prime week, book as soon as you can.
Mhm.
We're already filling the calendar for 2026. But that being said, I actually just booked a couple people this week that happened to call and looking for a last minute trip. A lot of places were filled up, and I had a group that had to pull out because of a hip surgery that sprung up unexpectedly.
Right.
And so I was happy to accommodate them and get them filled in kind of last minute for this summer. So I wouldn't count on things like that happening. But yeah, the earlier you can book, the better, and just make sure that we can get you on the right week for the species that you want to catch.
And you hit two things I was actually going to ask you. So, what are considered the prime dates for, let's say, either kings or sockeye or silvers or rainbows? Like, is there a specific week that you have in mind that I say, Ryan, I want to come up there and I want to catch big fat rainbows? And you're like, Maddie, it's September 3 to September 10 or something like that.
Yeah, for us, and we do get some big rainbows in September, at the end of the season. But if you were to ask me the prime rainbow
Right.
weeks or week, I would say second to third week of August,
Okay.
because that's when you've got a lot of spawning fish
Hmm.
that are in the and that will extend a little bit earlier and later, but that's a great time to come, and that's a great time to get you over to Moraine Creek and Katmai. And the sockeye are worked up in there at that point, and opportunities at some great rainbows.
And
If you
what if I
wanted to catch
wanted silvers? Is there a prime week for silvers or a prime 2 week for silvers? And same thing for sockeye.
Yeah, for silvers, I would say more towards the latter part of August. The meat quality is not always the best. It's not as they're not as chrome and silvers when they first start coming at the beginning of August.
Uh-huh.
But the numbers of fish are overwhelming that are out there during that time. And if you wanted to, really target kings or sockeye, I would put you in the first 3 weeks of July.
Gotcha. Very good. And then the last question, you mentioned you just booked a couple of people because of an unexpected hip surgery. Are there any openings for this year due to some cancellations like that one or others that you're trying to fill right now that somebody listening is like, you know what? I got to go. I got to make this happen. Or are you pretty much 2025 we're done right now?
No, yeah, and I appreciate you asking that actually. I do have um like 3 spots I'm trying to fill the last week of July. So that's going to be just starting to see some silvers come in, and the rainbows and dollies are going to be picking up big that week because that is kind of when the sockeye start dropping their eggs.
Okay.
And then I had someone that pushed to 2026 on the last week of September. I believe it's the 25th through the 1st of September, and that's actually a prime silver coho week.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Awesome. Awesome. Ryan, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that we should mention?
I think that's pretty good, man. We covered a lot, and I think gives people a good idea. And if it's something someone was interested in, like you kind of displayed, the website's a great place to start.
Yep.
And with that video you mentioned, we tried to make that just really give a good idea of what you might experience at the lodge and the accommodations and food and staff. So, um, those are all good resources to check out. And like I said, always happy to, I love hopping on the phone with people and get an idea of what they're looking for and being able to just share essentially what is my lifelong dream. And I'm blessed and lucky enough to live now.
I mean, it is fantastic. We should probably mention one more thing. The food, you have exquisite chefs at the lodge. This is not like, hey, we're having hamburgers and hot dogs tonight, boys. This is some good down home cooking food.
Yeah, yeah. We might do some burgers for lunch here and there, but dinner we'll do a 3-course meal. So appetizers, main course, and dessert. we're going to be serving food. Like we always do a steak night, shrimp scallop pasta. We usually work in a crab boil. We'll do barbecue ribs. So I've yet to have someone leave that wasn't pleased with our meal schedule.
And
So
I think, but that speaks volumes, right? Because, I mean, you have fished all day, you have worked up an appetite, and you're like, what are we having? Oh, I got steak tonight. Oh, I got shrimp scallop pasta. Ooh,
yeah, yeah.
That's good stuff. Ryan, I can't thank you enough for spending the past nearly hour with me talking about your lodge. You run an amazing organization. Of course, we have some mutual friends that have come to you. I want to come to you. I've talked to you a number of times, so
Yeah.
it's going to happen. I know I'm coming back in 27, but maybe I want to sneak to 26, but I got a 25th wedding anniversary I got to worry about, so I
Oh,
got to be a little
congrats,
careful.
congrats. Yeah, yeah. Well, whenever you're ready, we're here. I would be honored to host you. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to chat with me and have me on. So much appreciated.
Absolutely. Hang out for just a quick second with me. Again, that was Ryan Kocherhans. He's the owner of Alaskan Remote Adventures, and you can go to them, AlaskanRemoteAdventures.com. You can see the video, understand a little bit more about it is world-class fishing in Alaska, and you are so remote. You're not going to see anybody else. You're going to have an amazing time up there, the different fisheries and more. I will tell you, the grayling is incredible, but there's so many other wonderful fish. And if you go in the even years, this is one thing that we talked about, you get the humpies, the pink salmon, and what a fun time it is. Again, it's Alaskan Remote Adventures. It is on the Mulchatna River, just in the Bristol Bay region. Check it out today. That's it for this episode of Off the Hook with Matty D. We will see you again soon.